nonstop, pigeonholed. I would say that right there is the biggest reason for them to jump ship.
And that is why we made this a part 2, right?
Yep. Construction workers will start their own company.
Try
To
start their own
company. And then they have 18 months, and that's usually when they fail or work.
Like, if you don't think that people within the industry talk, you're out of your mind.
Oh, we talk all the time.
The question is, have you ever felt this way? Or have you ever done this?
I've done it. I've left.
Well, that's, at least you've got some experience more than I do. I've never, as much as I wanted to a couple times, I never worked up the nerve to actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a couple of stories for you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to need a couple for sure.
All right. Well, let's fucking do this thing, shall we?
Yeah, get after it, man.
All right, everybody. Welcome into another weekly episode of the I Shower After Work podcast. Podcast for everything trades and trades related. Happy you're joining us again. Jason is across from the table from me. How are you doing, my man?
Not too bad, buddy. Across from the table. That's good English there. I like that. That's a good start.
Across the table. Across the table.
I'm doing very well, man. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm all right. Clearly haven't had enough to drink.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. It's the fine line between not enough and just a little too much.
Right. Well, I wanted to do a little follow-up, man. This we're actually considering part 2 of last week's episode.
Yep.
And this time we've kind of overlooked a lot of important facts of our careers and stuff like that. But one thing that we haven't really ever really touched on is there comes a time for me, I've done it for a lot of people when it's just time to move on from the place that you're at, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that be the company changes, the original crew has moved on, or you're fed up with something in the company, or you just don't feel like you're a good fit anymore.
Okay.
Like, what does that really look like? And how should you actually handle it?
You're talking about dragging up.
That's
for lack of a better word.
Lack of a better term.
Okay, yep. I got you, man. Yeah.
When there's not another option, when you've exhausted all those other options.
Okay.
And you're just fed up.
It's definitely the second part of what we talked about last week. We talked about being able to stay motivated in your career, and sometimes it's difficult. But even if it's not about motivation, sometimes whatever it is about the job is no longer tenable, and it's time to say, now what?
Right.
All right. I'm willing to get after that. That's a good part 2 of what we talked about last week.
All right. Sweet. Now, sometimes you just can't wait for a group of layoffs, right? Because a lot of times in our industry, and especially where you and I are at in the union, you can actually ask for a layoff.
Yes, you can.
When you know that they're coming down the pipe, you can hop on that layoff bandwagon and move on to another company.
And some people don't realize, especially younger in your career, that that's not always a negative to ask for that.
No. And it's not. It can be looked at it as a negative.
They certainly can sometimes, right?
But there comes a time in your career where either one, you've asked enough questions, you've asked for more responsibility, you've asked for a position change or a task change or something, and you find yourself, as we talked last week, pigeonholed. Sometimes it's better just to be like, look, guys, I'm out. Right.
You do get to the place where you can have had enough. Right. We certainly see it a lot. I had a friend recently talk to me about dragging up, and I hadn't heard him use that term in a while. For anybody who's never heard it before, you're going to hear it from time to time. It seems less common with the economy the last few years in COVID. People kind of stayed where they stayed. Right?
Oh, for sure. We were all scared of our jobs.
Right. If you had something, you're kind of just riding it out like, well, I'm employed.
Yep.
Like, that was enough for the bad times, the dark times, right? That is true. To be able to drag up, when my buddy brought it up to me because he was frustrated. He's a plumber with another company, and he was trying to explain to me what was going on and why it was going right. Yes, we've talked very recently that there's a lack of skilled tradespeople out there, but that might not be enough of a reason. The fact that there's jobs available doesn't mean that you should just jump ship.
Right.
But it's okay that you have to sometimes. So we'll talk about both sides of this, right?
Well, and that's the part, right? When we talk about the economy, let's start with that, right? The economy will drive a lot of the drag ups.
Definitely.
Right. When the economy's slow, when there isn't that much going on, people will stop dragging up. When the economy's really good, and I've only heard the term drag up in the union.
I've only ever heard it in the union.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be applied to the non-union, jumping ship, changing it up, doing what you got to do. But for the most part, we have this ability in the union, and for anybody that doesn't know how it actually works, if you drag up or you get a layoff, you have to go sign the book.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wait for your number to be called for the next job to come up, and then you go work for that outfit if you take the call.
Yeah, if you decide to take it. It's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory.
Unless you're an apprentice, sometimes.
Yep. Well, if you're an apprentice in our local union, yes, it is mandatory.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They don't give you a choice.
I'm sure it varies, right? But yeah.
Right. But with us, you sign the book, and you have the choice whether to take it or not. But if you don't take so many, you get put back at the back of the book at the end number again.
Yeah, and you need to, if you are in a local somewhere, you need to know what those rules are.
Yes.
Because you may not want to take the first job that comes up after you take a layoff or decide to drag up.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to make sure you understand, like with everything, all the rules and regulations within your local, make sure you understand them so that you're following the rules to protect you, do right by the union, etc. Right?
Yep. And they always change.
Oh yeah, certainly
Those
it's not
rules
always the
can
same, right?
change
Yeah.
year to year because they're not solely tied to your contract date. The business hall and everybody can actually change those whenever they deem necessary.
Exactly.
Right. So, but why do you think the biggest reason for dragging up is?
Listen, I can give you all the reasons that I can think of off the top of my head that would probably make a person think about doing that. And then we'll dig into what I think is probably the biggest one, because I know that's your question. So like you said in the intro, you could no longer like the crew that you're working with. The leadership could be shit. It could be the type of work that you're doing. It could be a lifestyle change. I got a kid now and I can't work all the overtime. They change the benefits that I get, even your lifestyle, where you live. Maybe you moved and that place is now an hour and a half away from home when it was 25 minutes before. It could be anything like that, right? For me, I think it's usually one of two things. People either don't like the work that they're doing, or they don't like the leadership or the crew that they have to do that work with. Because as we talked in the last episode, we were talking about staying motivated at work.
Yep.
That's a big thing. If you don't like the people that you're working with, it makes the day terrible.
Right.
I think those two things usually factor in. And to a smaller note, knowing the type of work that you're staring down the barrel of. If you're with a company for a while, you'll hear about what the big jobs are that are coming up. You kind of know what you might be going to do. And if you've been with a company for a significant amount of time and they like you, they're probably going to tell you in advance, hey, when this one is wrapped up, you're going over here.
Right.
Those three factors seem to be the most common for people going, fuck it. Right? Yeah. We've all got a case of the fuck it's.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just knowing where to draw the line.
Yep. So
from your perspective, what do you see as a real common reason, the most common you think that people probably make the change?
I think for the most part, the number one reason would probably be fed up with what they're doing the same shit day in, day out, nonstop, pigeonholed. I would say that right there is the biggest reason for them to jump ship.
And that is why we made this a part two, right?
Yep.
So,
and I know there's other reasons. Quick story. I left a company because of trust issues.
How so?
They didn't trust me to do my job. So I left.
You were getting bird dogged or?
Kind of. So when I was in service, for the most part, I created the service department in the company. They never had one. And I was the only guy doing service work for the entire company. It was a small shop, right? The agreement was I would spend 70% of my time out in the field doing service calls, 30% doing office work. I was doing that. I was putting bids together, pricing for people that wanted prices for service calls and stuff like, a little bit bigger service calls. And I went and I was getting numbers for pricing for material from our parts guy. And then I was figuring it up. The owner of the company chewed the ass of the price guy for giving me the prices because I was getting privy to the knowledge of the company. And so he didn't trust me. He was worried I was going to start my own shop and take his customers. When I had already told him I had no want to start my own company. I wanted to drive this for them. I wanted this to be successful. I set the work hours. I set the clothes, the uniform. I actually made the service department have a uniform. And it got to a point where I had to look at him and be like, dude, I'm out. If you can't trust me, I'm out. I'll leave.
Yeah, that'd be frustrating, buddy. I can see that one not being cool, for sure.
I don't do no trust. If you think I'm going to fuck you over, you don't trust me in order to do my job. It's best for both of us for me to leave.
And see, this brings up something that I was going to mention later, but we'll just bring it up now. Sometimes the decision to leave and go somewhere new, whether it's a new company, whether it's whatever, it's not always because you're not happy with the type of work that's going. But as I mentioned, sometimes the ownership and leadership just don't seem to have your same interests in mind.
Right.
You know, they can be too protective, and it doesn't even just have to be protective of their customers. Hey, what that person did is stupid to lose a good employee with you, right? I can understand it from a business perspective if you were a nervous Nelly, as it is, right? That guy didn't need to be nervous about that, but obviously he didn't know that, right? Or he had trust issues, like those things happen. I kind of get that, but you do need to be aware that sometimes you and the company you don't see eye to eye on the future of your career.
Yep.
And there's going to be a lot of pauses and hesitation in this, folks, because it's a tough thing to discuss, because we've all been in the position, and if you haven't been yet, you're going to be at some point, where you're asking yourself midweek on a job that you've been doing for a while that you don't like, this isn't worth it.
Yep.
Maybe I should go back to the looking for a job if you're non-union, or go back on the book if you're a union employee, and just roll the dice.
Yep.
You know, and knowing when some people, I know people who did it all the time.
Right.
Like, I'd see them gone, and all of a sudden they'd be back a year later, like, I thought you drug up and went to another company. Oh, yeah, it didn't work out. I'm back. Like, oh, so the grass is now always greener, huh? Like,
right. That's another good point, right?
Right. That's something I had written down here.
Yeah.
Yes.
The grass isn't always greener on the other side of the goddamn fence.
Right.
It's greener where you water it.
Right. It's greener where you water it. And that's why I say there's going to be a lot of pauses, because some of the stuff just trips over the fact that it's a real personal career affecting decision.
Yeah, it can be. And if you don't do it, if you do it out of feeling, out of anger, out of emotion of any kind, it's going to be the wrong fucking decision, because you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Don't make snap decisions about your career. Like, a bad week, a bad month, you're going to have bad weeks and bad months.
Yep.
Give it a hot minute. And just because you heard that, oh, well, this company's hiring and my buddy works there and he's doing great. Well, they might not like you like they like him.
Right. Oh, God. And that's another thing. Whatever you do, if you're dragging up, or if your buddy is dragging up, never, ever, 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 ever put your name on the line for somebody else. Even if you think that they're a good person, even if they're your buddy, do not reach out your neck, because if they fuck up, they drag you with them.
It's absolutely true.
Jason, I love you like a brother, but if you drug up and you came over to where I'm at, I wouldn't say two shits about you to the company. They would ask me. If you throw my name out there, they'll ask me and be like, he's on his own.
Yeah, that's an employee.
That's an employee.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How I know him outside of here, I agree. I would do the same thing. I can tell you, listen, personally, what I would call a nephew of mine, not by blood, but by relation.
Yep.
P, you know who you are. He is getting into the electrical local right now. And he asked me, how do I do it? This, that, and the other thing. I said, listen, here's how you do it. Here's who you talk to. Here's the phone number. I got it all out for him, told him where to find it. Said, listen, I will get you a reference letter that you can take in there. But I made him understand, and I even wrote it within the reference letter, what I expected of him and his understanding of what he was getting into, so that when he read that, he knew I set stipulations to say, this is someone who understands this is a start of a career. He's not just looking for a job. He understands responsibility, dangers, everything involved. I laid it out so that was not only a reference letter for him, but a contract of sorts that he could then read and go, oh, okay, The person writing the letter has these expectations of me.
Right.
Now I know what they have. He's set a realistic.
Right.
So that's where we're at, right? I want him to succeed. I was willing to do it. But to your point, I thought long and hard about, do I know this young man well enough? And do I trust that he's going to have a work ethic that is not going to make me look like a jackass at the end of the day? I had some conversations with him, one of them personal here on the deck one night, him and his cousin, and made them understand, listen, this isn't a job. This is a career.
Right.
If you go into it just looking to go to work every day, I'm not going to stick my neck out for you. So you make a great point there, buddy. Yeah, if you come to my company, I mean, they'll know who you are bipartisan from all this, but your career is your career.
Yep.
Like, I understand. I completely agree with everything you just said, right? Yeah. Yeah, sticking your neck out for somebody. Yeah, you want to do right by your friends. Sure. But, man, your friend ain't your career.
Nope. I still got bills to pay.
Yeah, it's a shitty distinction to make, and it sounds fucking cold-hearted and shit, but I couldn't agree with more what you're saying, right? Like,
Here's what it is.
So, in your case, that was one time that you had an opportunity, and I understand you making that change there. If the guy doesn't trust you, lack of trust is a big one, right? To me, that falls in that leadership/ownership category. Mm-hmm. It'd be the same thing if you were getting micromanaged or bird dogged by a foreman or a project manager on every little thing you did. If you can't be trusted, then why am I in this goddamn position?
Right.
Right. I understand the desire sometimes to drag up, as we say, to leave, to go find something different, look for greener pastures. I personally I'm mildly nervous, and have been mildly nervous throughout my career, to have a good relationship with my employer over time. I was, I think, always willing to at least try my best to ride out the bad times as much as I can.
Sure.
And not jump ship. But there's been times I wanted to I got to admit, my current shop, I've been lucky. I had a great relationship with my current shop. But there's been shops that I've been with that I'd be on a job thinking, why the fuck am I doing this? Like,
yep.
Now, whether it's, and there's something I left off my list, I just realized. Mine were never the things I mentioned. It was never the crew or the leadership or the like, I didn't have kids. I didn't move. It was nothing like that. Safety was a couple times that I was going to just give it up.
Yep. That's a big one.
I had a job where some of the people that were working under me on the crew doing unsafe things, where I went to management at the end of a week or near the end of a week and said, listen, this person is on this job site next week, or I am, but it's not both.
Yep.
I'll let you decide. It's not an ultimatum. I'm just telling you, I'm not willing to accept them getting injured or them getting me or somebody else injured. If I was being honest with you, most of that thought was about myself. I didn't want to get myself killed. But I also had apprentices there that I was worried about as well. This was a journeyman who was doing unsafe things. Yep. That was the only one time where if it had gone the other way, like, great. Like, thanks for the job. I hope to see you again down the road. I'm out.
Yep.
Like, I'm not taking those chances. Safety was a big one that should have put on that list, right? So, and there's one thing that seems to come up very often when you hear about somebody like dragging up, wanting to go somewhere else. I'm starting my own goddamn shop. You hear people saying that, right? No, man, I'm not giving these guys my time, my money anymore. I'm worth way more than that. I'm just, man, look into what it takes to start your own shop.
Yep. Well, and the statistics are out there, and that's how adults talk. Jesus. The stats actually say 1 in 4. 1 in 4 construction workers will start their own company.
Try to start their own.
Well, and then they have 18 months, and that's usually when they fail or work.
Yeah, that's what I found too. Is 18 months was the sort of the do or die moment. You get through the first year just at a sheer will, and likely don't get yourself in too bad a financial debt related position in the first year.
Yep.
But then things start to catch up with you. Whether it's you didn't get as much work as you thought you were going to get. The cost of things was way more than you thought. It takes you longer to do them, and God help you if you have employees. Yep. We have a guy, he's a friend of mine. He was a foreman of mine years ago. I've been chatting with sporadically. Chris S., if you're listening, buddy, he stayed in the union, but left the shop he was with for a lot of years. Went on his own, started his own shop. He's very successful. I'd like to get him on and get just this perspective sometime of how it is to go out and start your own shop. Like it is an important part of this. It's big for some people. Yep. Daunting.
Yep. Yeah. I thought about starting my own for a great many years. And then I realized that I don't want to work 80 hours a week. That's not in the cards for me anymore. You know,
For me, it wasn't the amount of time that I would have to put in, because I had the understanding that owning your own business takes a lot more time than just working for a living. For me, it was always twofold. It was that kind of. I do like the fact that I can work reasonable hours most weeks, which construction and unions and things fought for over the years, so I'm really behind it.
Yep.
But it was also the fact that I really like that my employers over the years, especially the one I'm with now, found my work for me.
Right.
You know, I'd never try to bag on them when things were slow, when you had to take a week off here or there because there wasn't. Okay, you're doing your best, great. Like, let me know when the job comes around again. Like,
I'll usually be one of the volunteers.
yeah,
Be like, I'll say it. It's okay.
yeah. And that brings up something that's a big part of this. You need to make sure that you're in a financial position to drag up and go somewhere else, because when that new job comes up, whether you have to go find your own or whether you're in a union, you have to go on the book, you don't know how long that's going to be.
No, you don't.
And listen, things vary province to province of Canada, state to state in the United States. Man, you better look into what you get for unemployment. It seems enough.
It isn't.
It's
Ever.
It ain't. I mean, yeah, can you pay the bills? If you don't have a bunch of bills, probably.
Yeah, and you don't do anything ever.
Right, yeah. If you don't want any extras, you don't want any fun.
Keep your lights off, you know.
Yeah, the biggest thing for this, we're not bagging on it. Sometimes you've had enough and you got to make a change.
Right.
We're behind it. Yeah, if you're not getting treated right, you're not getting what you need out of your career, good on you. Go make a change, go somewhere else. Yeah. But don't jump in with both feet with no life preserver.
Right.
If you know things are going south, well, now's the time to suck it up. Take a bunch of overtime whenever you can. Make a bunch of extra money.
Sack it away. And then decide what you're going to do. Make sure you discuss these things with your spouse if you got one. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, don't just come home and go, I quit my fucking job today. Hope we're going to be, you got any money in the bank? Like,
right.
Yeah. So,
no, that's bad move.
Yeah, that's a whole bad thing. And not even just that. It's the thought of you think that you're going to find a better job, as we said, and the grass isn't always greener. Yep. It's also the fact that you don't know if that next job is long term.
Right. Most of the time you don't know.
Right. You hear about, there's a big project coming up. I'd really like to get laid off right now because they're building that new nuke plant or that new data center's and you might not get picked. You might. Right. But you don't know if you're in the first set of layoffs after that. Those jobs are only busy for months at a time. Then all of a sudden there's a slow patch.
Right. Well, and that's what people need to understand is that if you do decide to jump ship and drag up, that no matter where you're at, no matter what you do, your work ethic, your work quality, you as a person determine whether or not the place is going to be satisfactory or not. Because I think people it's called job hopping, right? And you don't see it so much in the union because job hopping is now being referred to the easiest way to get the most money out of an employer. You put your feelers out there, you tell them what you're making. This next company offers you $2 more. The next company offers you $2 more. And, people are jumping ship every two to 6 months for an extra couple of bucks.
Oh, sure. And we've known guys who, we call them travelers usually most of the time, but people who are just chasing the next big project with lots of man hours on it because they know there's overtime. They know they can slip in, be a number, either work hard because that's the way they are, or slip in and do the bare minimum and get paid and get some over.
Or be a lead weight and drag the job down so that pushes them into overtime.
Listen, man, I've seen some. So
I can't stand those people.
One of my very first job sites with my current shop, we had a few travelers on the site, and they were starting to get through the busy part of the project. Things were running down, and they're the first people to go. It's just the nature of the business, right? Your local people get to keep their jobs, and the other people have to go first. It's part of the rules.
Yep.
We were finding things shoved down in pipes to keep us from being able to pull, trying to slow the job down in hopes that they'd hire people back. Guys doing great big long wire pulls with one little tiny wire, pulling 50 more behind it that snapped 2 out of 3 times because they knew it'd take a while to refit that. I've seen some shit, right? Like,
dude, that's horrible.
Yeah, when I saw that stuff, I was that was very early on in my career. Like I said, it wasn't my first shop, but it was one of my first jobs with my current shop. I was still an apprentice, and I was worried for a minute, like, oh, maybe the union really is fucked. Is this a bunch of union? Is this the way the union is? Now I've come to realize, no, that was a couple of pieces of shit within the union.
Yeah, that's the bad part is there's shitty people everywhere. Union, non-union, it doesn't matter. There's shitty people out there.
Right. Well, I assume you've heard, like, I mean, I say rumors, but we know it's not. I mean, they called themselves like rats and things like that. Mm-hmm. They talked about having secret passwords and handshakes and stuff so that they knew I'm on your team. If we need to do something to slow this down because we can get overtime this weekend.
Yep.
Well, I guess that's going to happen in a lot of industries, but
yep.
I haven't seen a lot of occasions of it in ours, but I've certainly seen enough to know that it's a real thing and it exists.
Right.
And that's fucked.
And I'll put it out there that is solely a union thing. That right there is solely a union thing.
Yeah.
Because non-union shops don't hire travelers.
Yeah, right. Why would you hire a guy out of town if you didn't have to, right?
Right. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
You know. But I think when it comes to actually leaving, there are so many different factors and it can get so muddy so fast. And they're saying that, you know, they break it down into age ranges, right? Let's go. We're going to start at the 18 to 22 range.
Sure.
These people are just kind of either working part-time or to go to college, or they're doing part-time to put their feelers out there, figure out what they want to do. They're not sticking around anywhere long with the new up-and-comings, right? They're not going to start a career. That's not what they're looking for, right? So they'll come in, they'll bounce. You know.
They're looking for a job.
Right. Then you got that 22 to 26 range. They're finishing college. They're doing their thing. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. They'll stick around for a couple of years at a place and then bounce. Then the 20s to mid 30s, those people will last about 4 years typically. And then above about mid 40s to your 55 to your 60.
Yeah, we're locked in.
Yep. Those are the guys that are sticking around for 10 plus years. They're the tenured guys. Because once you reach past 55, I mean, you're just staring down the barrel of, that's the end of the road. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's getting close fast.
Yeah.
Right.
I just turned 46. I can see myself riding it out till the end here. Like, things would have to get real bad for me to think about even really changing. I certainly wouldn't be changing careers.
Right.
But getting out of the union? Nah. Changing shops? Not unless they make me.
Yeah, not unless I'm forced.
Yeah, I want to keep working hard.
But then you raise another good question, another good point there that just popped in my head. You saying that we're all fucking replaceable.
Yeah, sure.
We're all just a number. No matter if you're liked in your shop or you're not. They get slow. They have to make cuts. You're somewhere on that list. You might not be on the bottom. You might not be at the top. You don't know, but you're definitely on the list.
Let me disagree a tiny bit with what you just said. Okay. I agree with where you're coming from. What I disagree with is you can be a number with a lot of shops, union, non-union, it doesn't matter. I think at some point you're with a shop long enough that if most of the people, especially people in management positions, know your name, that's putting you up on that list quite a bit. You're at some point, if you work hard and do well, you no longer become a number. You're a name with that company. People know who you are, but that doesn't make you any less replaceable. What you said is exactly true. You still found yourself, your name has a position on that list, and if they get to a low enough number that they need to cut people, eventually they're going to get to you.
Yeah. There's always somebody ahead of you.
Right.
That's it goes back to the saying, there's always somebody ice skating uphill. Right. Now, doesn't really work here, but it's the one that came up in my head. Give me a break. But there is always somebody that is better than you.
Or they feel that they would rather keep for one reason or another. And the higher you are up that list, when times become either slow or untenable or whatever the reason is that manpower is now lower, you're leaned on more by being one of the people that stayed, and that will be a vocal thing that you will be told.
Right.
If the shop starts laying off a bunch of people or firing a bunch of employees, and like, hey, John, you're important, we're keeping you. You're not You're not getting caught up in these layoffs, but we're going to need you to step up. And then you roll your eyes and go, of course I will. Sure.
Yep.
Because you don't want to get laid off either.
Nope.
But now there's more of an expectation instantaneously
Yep.
of what they're going to need you to be able to take care of, because whatever the reason is, they went low on manpower. Like, it happens, right?
Well, and God bless the shop that I'm with, but I can honestly look at you and I can start naming all the names that are ahead of me, and that list is long. That is above me. That I'm not at their level.
I don't even think about that list in my head, because it'd be the same thing with me, buddy. Like, yeah, I don't believe I'm replaceable at all. I like the position I'm in. I hope that working hard keeps me employed.
Right.
That's all you could ask for.
Right.
And so there's one other thing too, dude. Not one other, but there's another thing here. I talked about the people chasing the big jobs, right? The gold rush.
Yeah.
You know, like, so when I was first in the States, I was thinking about getting in the trades and all this. It's not quite as big now, but the natural gas rush in Canada out west was huge. Mm-hmm. And there were places that were so desperate for people that I could have signed, and the contracts varied a little, but it would be, they fly me into Canada, they transport me to the site, I work 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 7 days a week, with probable, in big letters on what I read, probable overtime to be expected. They'd fly me home. I'd have a week off, 10 days off, fly back and do the same thing over. I knew lots of guys from the East Coast, especially like welders and plumbers and electricians. Man, they were flying out, they were making bank.
Yep.
When I was first in, I wanted to be able to, contribute to my marriage and make a good living and all that stuff. I almost rushed myself into that, and I'm glad looking back that I didn't, because now I've learned these days, chasing that gold rush, it only lines your pocketbook. It doesn't help you out with your local career. The guys and gals I know, it didn't help out with their marriage and their families any.
No.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself 4 years down the road in a shitty marriage, but you got a bunch of money in the bank, but you're now losing half of that because your wife wants to leave because she doesn't see you except for, a week, a month, if you're lucky. Some of the contracts are longer than that, right?
Yep.
I thought really long and hard about that for a while, and we still have people doing that these days.
Yep. That's a single person's game.
That's a single person's game. Yeah, mostly young, or somebody, if they're older, they've probably been doing that their whole life. You'll eventually meet a guy, I could say just gal, growly, but it'll be a guy he has a camper, yep, and he stays in a local campground, the cheapest one he can find that's close to the job site, for a year or two or whatever.
Yep.
Works the job, makes all the overtime, bounces, finds the next one, moves
has a dog.
Yeah, right. Definitely has a dog. Right. Yeah, they always have a scraggly. Like, the dog always looks the same. A little small scraggly dog. Like, yeah, it's so funny you bring that up, man. It's absolutely true.
Yep.
They all have one just for company, right?
Yep.
We all know those guys who chase that gold rush. There's money to be made, but
I did it.
Yeah, you got to think long term, right?
I went to the oil fields to chase money. And that was the worst decision ever.
Yeah, you had told me that. So how long was it that you were doing that?
I made it 3 months. 3 months. I almost got into a fist fight with the owner of the company twice. In 3 months. The guy was a dick.
But look, those big projects, they're all push, 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 right?
Well, they are push, push, push. But what really set me off is that I was supposed to get all the overtime I could chew, and I needed it at this point in my life, right? I was balancing between bankruptcy and not, right? Had a bunch of medical stuff happen. It was just a bad time in my life. So I went and I chased the money. And I would drive up from Rapid to northern part of Montana. I'd work, and I'd drive home. It was for the week, right? I was home for the weekends. I can tell you the worst part about it was that I couldn't even pick up my daughter. My brand new baby girl, I couldn't even hold her because she didn't know who I was.
I see, that sucks. Screaming. Yeah, you mentioned that before. That's a drag.
And then on top of it, the time that I actually drug up and didn't say a word, he was the only guy that I've ever left a job, quit or left, and not said anything to. Came up, started working on Monday. Tuesday, we ended up snapping the line on the crane, the truck crane. And he told me, well, that's all I got for you. You might as well just go home. Drove all the way up there for 12 hours worth of work. I grabbed all of my shit and I left. Didn't say a goddamn word. He didn't deserve it. People like that, they are out there. Those situations exist. They do not deserve it.
They don't deserve you dragging up, or they don't deserve your work ethic.
No, they don't deserve saying shit to you and just leaving.
Yeah, well,
No, they totally deserve not saying anything to and just leaving.
yeah, I wanted to clarify
Yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah. He didn't deserve the respect of you.
He didn't reserve my
Yeah,
he didn't
I got what
deserve
you're
my
saying. Yeah,
respect
for sure.
as a worker, as an
Yeah.
employee.
And again, that's why I mentioned earlier, like temper, right? Like
Yep.
you can make those decisions just as long as you're willing to deal with the consequences. And I've learned over my career, I mean, I've had calls from electricians and non-electricians at other shops who knew the person had worked with me at some point because they had heard my name, have called me and go, hey, tell me about so-and-so. Like, if you don't think that people within the industry talk, you're out of your mind.
Oh, we talk all the time.
You have met people over the years that you've developed relationships with, even if it's a cursory one where they have to think from it like, oh God, what was that goddamn Canadian's name that worked on that site 2 years ago? Like, he was with that company. Call up and go, hey, tell me about so-and-so. We just got him. Are they any good? Like, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Don't fool yourself by that. You don't think that going to another shop or even another state means that they won't know somebody.
Right. Dude, our industry is huge, but it's also small at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Your reputation will definitely get there before you do.
Oh, for
Definitely.
sure it will. And that, listen, it's same thing goes with owners. These professionals who get in ownership and presidential and management positions in these companies, you don't think they have friends that do the same thing with it? Of course they
all
do.
talk to each
They
other.
all know
They're
each other.
networking events.
Yeah.
They're all they're all sitting around with a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey, shooting the shit, bitching about the people they have underneath them.
Right. Yeah. Point being, don't think just because you left and went somewhere else that that's a blank slate.
No.
That,
Most of the time it's not.
right. It could be, but it probably won't be.
Right.
Yeah. Like I'd say 50-50, best case scenario.
Yeah.
Absolutely best case scenario. Right. So,
Yeah.
this is something that I'd kind of been meaning to bring up for a while. So I'm glad that we did it because it's one of these deals where if you, as I said, if you make a snap decision and you didn't think ahead, or you're making a decision just out of, I want something different, I need something different, I should be careful what you wish for,
Yeah.
and know what you're getting yourself into would be my lesson of the day here.
Yep.
And real quick, man, before we think about wrapping this up, I just want to say this out loud. We are both pro-union guys, and we've been staunch about that on this, but we said we're here for all the trades, union and non-union, right?
I spent a lot of years non-union.
Yeah. I believe, unpopular opinion here, I believe that if you were going to make this sort of change, I think non-union is actually a more beneficial position if you're a hardworking, diligent employee, because you are less of a number. You don't just go on the book on the position on the day that you signed and wait for your turn to come up on the bench.
Yep.
You can go into companies and say, here's my resume, talk to me, get to know me. You can have an actual interview.
Yep.
It's not just a wait. I believe if you decide to drag up, you decide to make a big change, I actually think it's a better position to be in if you're a non-union person for someone who knows they're diligent and hardworking.
Right.
You could still get the same benefit of what I just talked about, that people within the industry know each other, and you go somewhere else and they call up and go, yeah, John's great. Yeah, John did all sorts of stuff for us years. He just decided to make a change. You could get that benefit too.
Yep.
That's not as likely as you going into a non-union shop, interviewing and letting them see who you are. It's one of the few drawbacks, I think, of actually being unionized as far as making a change voluntarily or non-voluntarily in the job goes.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. The fact of being non-union and changing shops, one, it's super stressful, right?
It's not cool.
Because and you have to do that kind of union still if we changed jobs, even just staying in the same company and going to a different job site with a different crew of guys that you've never worked with before. You have to prove yourself all over again.
Oh, listen,
Right.
I was talking to a kid about this morning, man. Shout out to Wyatt and Jackson. We're working on the job site with me today, a couple of power limited guys. Wyatt is very new. I think he just started school, 19 years old. Like, I looked at him like, man, you're in it.
Yep.
You're getting in young. Good for you. You'll retire early. Good. But I was explaining just that very thing to him. I said, the only drag is when you do have to change shops, you're going to look at yourself and go, oh, now I got to get a bunch of new people and they don't know me. Yep. That happens at every level.
Yep.
So,
And what sucks worse is, I think when it comes to the non-union side of things, if you're a journeyman and you're doing that, the expectation is there that you know your shit. Like you don't get this, what we have in the union of there's a little bit of a give. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but if you go from in a non-union shop to another non-union shop as a journeyman or even as a foreman, they expect you to know all of those skills right then and there. No fuck around. On the union side, when we go from shop to shop or we go from job site to job site, there's a little give. Like you can start having conversations with guys, be like, all right, so I have done this. I'm a new journeyman. I don't have a lot of experience in this. So I'd like more experience here. You don't get that non-union.
That's true. And on that exact note, that's something I would say. There are certainly times where I, even at my level now, I've said it before, where you get to know the people at your shop well enough. And even if you are a number, but they've employed you for a long time, they know who you are, where you can be, I don't think brave is the right word, but I'd say where you have enough experience and you know enough people at your shop where you don't feel bad, or you can get confident enough to call them up and go, yeah, so that project, I'm not real familiar with X, Y, or Z.
Right. Yep.
Can you explain some things to me, or can I get some help out here from somebody? Or maybe you need to put somebody on this if it's a panic to get it done. Like being able to do that, you only get to do that if you're with the company a long time.
Right.
As to your point, you can't do that if you've been with them 6 months, a year. They want you to understand all those things, where with a shop for a little while, trying to kill bugs here, folks, you have that ability at least to go, I don't really understand that. Great.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good point. That's a little against my unpopular opinion, but that's a perfect add-on to that. You make a real good point I wasn't thinking of, buddy. So
I try.
That's what John's here for, folks. Keep me honest. Before we wrap up here, a couple of quick things I wanted to mention. My big brother Greg from Tiny Homes Atlantic, if you hadn't heard that episode, you can go back and listen to it now. He had fact-checked me on a couple of things. We were trying to think of a clever name for my brother as the fact-checker. I haven't come up with one yet, but he's going to ongoing be a fact-checker for us now after our recent episode about hunting. He did tell me it's no longer the way I thought it was. There are way more white-tailed deer than moose in Nova Scotia now. I guess it was just my perspective when I lived there, so I just wanted to get that honestly back out there. Apparently I was wrong. There's plenty of deer now. I thought it was moose territory. I guess they still got plenty in the Highlands, but not so much anywhere else. So
good. Yeah,
in case anybody else listened to that going, that's not right. I just wanted to put that back out there, honestly.
Good.
So
Craig.
Yeah, that's right. And future upcoming episode, my big brother is going to finally make his first trip to the Midwest here to visit. It only took him almost 18 years. I'm going to give him some grief about that when he's here, but I'm happy that he's coming. I think we're going to have an episode when he's in town. So
we definitely are.
Yeah, if you enjoyed him and Nigel on our Tiny Homes Atlantic episode, you'll definitely like that. We're going to dig in with him a little more about running your own business and dealing with the ins and outs of that. So,
and this time it won't just be Jason that you have to listen to.
Yes, I actually have John here for that one, since it was that was an on the road event last time. Buddy, can you think anything I'm missing about this?
Nah, man. How do you want to wrap it up?
Let me repeat real quick what I just said, and then we're not going to beat a dead horse. Listen, one thing that I would say that sort of sums all this up for me is we hear the term work-life balance all the time.
Dude.
That's goddamn horseshit, people. We're going to have to change that immediately. It should be a life-work balance.
Yep.
So if you find yourself unhappy and you're thinking about dragging up and changing a job, just remember your life is the priority and work is to some point secondary. Yes, you have to make a living and you have to earn a living and have benefits and take care of your friends and family and all that stuff, right? But if you think about it from a life work balance perspective and not the other way around, if changing jobs improves your life long term, great. But if it doesn't improve it short term and you're making a snap decision, calm down. Take a breath. Remember, the grass is always greener on the other side, and know that it might only be bad short term. And if you just ride the wave, it could be all right.
Yep.
So
let your job supplement your life.
Yeah. Take a breath. Yep. Changing jobs every couple minutes because you're unhappy with what you're doing. Man, nobody's happy with what they're doing all the time. We talk about it ad nauseum. Take a time. Think about it. just make good decisions. And if you do have to make a change, make an educated change and make sure you're financially ready for the in-between times.
Damn straight, man.
So thank you, everybody, for listening to us for another week here. We really appreciate you. From the Job Trailer here, the I Shower After Work podcast. Please check out everything about us is on our website at the isawpodcast.com. It's going to be a long day, folks. This is what whiskey does to you. Please, if you have any ideas for episodes, you have any feedback you'd like to give us, you can reach out there. You can reach out DMs on Instagram and any of our social medias. We are happy to hear from you. We're happy to do any episode ideas, even if it's nothing to do with construction. And if you do want to support, pardon me, this little ongoing growing podcast here, check out the Buy Us a Beer widget on our website. We do really appreciate everybody who helps us out there, and it helps keep this little podcast going.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, as you can hear, folks, my throat's going because we'll be doing multiple episodes today. Thank you, John, for being here from the Eastside Job Trailer. I appreciate you, buddy.
Absolutely.
And
happy to be here again.
Yeah, what do we tell everybody every week?
Your work keeps the world working, my man.
That's goddamn right. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.